the Honourable Minister for Commerce and Industry, Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, the Secretary of the Department of Commerce, Mr. Rajiv K, the President of the CII, Mr. Sumit Majumdar, ladies and gentlemen. Today indeed is both a challenging and a solemn day because a significant part of our country and more particularly Nepal has been very seriously affected by a natural calamity. Our hearts would go out to all those who suffered both in terms of life, injury or property. Having said that, let me compliment the Department of Commerce and the CII on a very successful global exhibition on services. The competitive battle for services and the expansion of services is an area where we can neither afford to lose nor can we at all lose. Other sectors of the economy present several strong challenges to us. For agriculture, you need land, you need water, you need other resources, you need to still hugely irrigate your lands. For manufacturing, you need to become globally competitive in terms of cutting your cost. You need competitive interest rates and cheaper availability of capital. You need a competitive labor regime. You need utilities at competitive cost. You need comparable infrastructure. For mining, you need to have a resource under the ground. And therefore, these are several hurdles that you have to cross. Till in agriculture, in manufacturing, in mining, you become globally competitive. But services has to be more easily India's territory. For services, you need a population. And there we can almost in an area where we can't be second to anyone. You need a good human resource. Therefore, both the hands that provide the service, the mind that thinks of the services, and that section of population to which the services are provided has to be large in number. And that is something which is very easily available in India. Services is one area where government regulation has been the least. We've seen a tradition in our country and we are trying to break free of those conceptual norms that all other sectors of the economy had been tied up with regulations. Relatively, services was more free. And therefore, if people want to expand, service sector did provide them an opportunity to unleash their own energies. Services is not entirely dependent on infrastructure. And therefore, despite an inadequate infrastructure, this was one sector where we could still grow. And therefore, now with improved infrastructure, you can probably grow faster. And services is one area where you are expanding and chartering into new territories. And creation of those new territories depends on the creativity of human mind. If I had been speaking on this platform a few years ago, probably my speech would have been entirely different. Today, and look at the change that has come in the last couple of years, literally the last few months. Who is the largest retailer in the world? The largest retailer in the world is a person who doesn't have a single retail store. That's the change which services has brought about. The largest transport company in the world today doesn't have a single vehicle. And both of them are capable of generating, both these sectors are capable of generating millions of jobs world over. And if we look at this example of what's happened to retail and what's happened to transport, where you can have the largest retail business without having a retail store, you can have the largest transport company without having a single vehicle, then are we in the next few years looking at sectors where over the next few years the brick and mortar branches of banks will disappear? In all probability, many of them would. Are we then envisaging a world where, sitting in one part of the world, you can be educated by institutions which exist either physically somewhere else or only exist in the cyberspace? I am particularly mentioning this because services are now expanding into new uncharted areas. They are going to be dependent on the creativity of the human mind. They are going to be dependent on a battle of ideas. You now have a company which is world over. You just have to get onto the relevant app, and in half an hour your lunch or dinner could arrive from the choicest of your restaurants and eating places. So kitchens may well become, at least in developed part of the world, in cities, dispensable institutions. In some parts they are becoming. And therefore this is how the field of services is going to change. And one thing let us keep in mind, what has stopped India from realizing its full potential is that we see too many conspiracies. And therefore when new areas are chartered, there are many minds which work overtime to find out where the problem is and how it can be stopped. And when we stop these areas, we are actually falling behind as far as the world competitive economic battle is concerned. And I think today, how do I stop? How do I delay? This is a mindset which we have to put behind us. And in a country where 1/6 of the global population lives. And a country which is going to be one of the largest recipient of services, therefore should be one of the natural creators of that service. And what is 57% of your GDP today, its own volumes would therefore are bound to expand. Do we realize I mentioned vehicles? That in the new concept of transport between a fast-moving metro system and the new transport services which are being privately made available, is ownership of private vehicles going to become dispensable? Are we then going to enter into the era of pooled vehicles? Maybe save on fuel, save on drivers, save on parkings, save on investment into a vehicle. And jobs being created for millions who are providing those services. Therefore, the idea can never be, how do I stop so and so? The idea is, these are services which will flow. And these are services which will defy prohibitions. In a large number of professions, we still haven't opened up. But I can see right in front of my own eyes the outsourcing in those professions has resulted in creating job opportunities as far as India is concerned. So officially and that is where, since the Department of Commerce also looks after sectoral limits, at times some of those limits will be defined by technology. Let me give you an illustration. When I can read every global newspaper on the net, on my iPad and now on my smartphone, how does it make a difference whether I can lift a physical copy and read it or not? So our sectoral limits have been defined by technology. I can see every foreign channel through the satellite. So our sectoral limits really do not matter in those areas. I see hundreds of lawyers in Delhi, Mumbai and Bangalore typing out opinions and preparing documents and sending it to their counterparts internationally. But we officially don't allow any foreign collaborations. So technology and this battle of ideas has defined all areas where we've been slow to grow. I think we have to realize a fundamental principle. What has changed between 1989, 1990 and today? I remember both Nirmalaji and Mr. Kher now deal with the WTO. In 89-90, I used to find written on the walls of Delhi asking Mr. Duncan to go back. And the fear at that time legitimately was that these are all institutions which are being created because the economy is so centered. Then it's going to be the United States, it's going to be Western Europe, which wants to dominate the global markets. They want their products and services to dominate the global markets. And therefore, their products and services which dominate the global markets are going to capture the world. Our products will disappear, our services will disappear, and therefore we must not fall into this trap. I think the first script was rewritten by China. And then the other Southeast Asian economies, joined in that script. If not in manufacturing, in services, India also joined in that script. And the new script was based on the principle that ultimately it is the consumer's choice that matters. The consumer will decide what products he wants to buy and what services he wants to utilize. And consumers are not fools, consumers are intelligent people. So consumers will buy products which are of good quality and at cheap cost. They will hire services which are both cheap and of good quality. As a result of which manufacturing shifted to China, and then in small ways it has shifted to other parts of the world. And one of the reasons why the stalemate in WTO has existed in the last 1.5 decades is that this script got changed. And in the new script, if you were to completely open out services, except commercial services, banking and financial services, or except manufacturing in high technology areas, it's the low cost economies which would have dominated the global scene. And therefore, the traditional powers decided to put all the negotiations on the back burner. That's the stage script. And therefore, we have to realize that ultimately it is now between us and the other low-cost economies. There's a silver lining for India today. For more than 30 years, China has grown at 9% plus on an average. 33 years to be precise. And one of the reasons that their GDP and economy has become so large, that for 33 years they grew at such a pace, and now it's become difficult for them to maintain that pace. The Chinese now admit that the new Chinese normal is not 9.5%, it is going to be 7%. The IMF feels that it may be a few decimal points even below that. And one of the reasons why they believe so is a tactical shift in their economy that they have made. They now want to shift from manufacturing also to services. They also want to shift only from manufacturing to consumption. And one of the factors that they realize is that their wage bills have increased. In fact, the Chinese finance minister recently in a meeting I was present said, our wage bills are significantly higher in some industries, almost twice that of our neighbors. So I underline the word neighbors. And that is where a distinct advantage lies for us. For the first time in the last 3 decades, our relatively wage bill is going to be cheaper. And therefore, are we in a position to provide globally competitive services of high quality at the best available cost, at the most competitive cost? Now let's take illustrations. The best of our hospitals are today providing treatment at a fraction of what the global hospitals do. But it took us 10 years to decide what our insurance policy is going to be. Between 26 and 49, the Indian political system, of which I am a part, was guilty of obstructing the growth in the sector. Because we thought that the country can wait. What's there if we take a decade to take a decision? Fortunately, we've now taken the decision. So with an adequate backup, ourselves and the country which will grow in the in coming times? Do we or do we not need the expansion of the best hospitals in the country? If our doctors produced out of this system can run the health service in the United States and in Britain, I'm sure the same gentlemen are doing a very good job in India also. Today's newspapers report that while not being so open on the visa policy, the US government still has decided that we need to smuggle in a few more Indian doctors. So they are going to be liberal in regard to visas to the Indian doctors. Because they need human trained minds. Now, do we not need to unleash our energies in this sector? But our philosophy of obstructionism and prohibition says, unless you have so many lakh square feet or so many acres of urban land, you cannot set up a new medical college. So don't we need to relax them? Should not the best government hospitals in India and the best private hospitals have an additional block, give them an extra FSI, create additional colleges, so that your own underserviced healthcare system is good enough to be competitive globally, and therefore at almost a fraction of the international cost, you have international medical tourism flowing into India. And what holds true of this sector holds true of every other sector. How many places have we used our natural ability at attracting tourism? The largest sea coast, we have the largest peninsula in the world. Mountains, religion, the Buddhist circuit, the Ganga. Now these are all areas which are not merely a part of our heritage, but this heritage can bring us huge commercial dividends as far as tourism is concerned. So we will either prohibit construction within umpteen number of square yards or miles. We will impose the most exorbitant of taxes, make our hotels costliest in South Asia and Southeast Asia, and then be under an erroneous impression if the states and the center impose higher taxes, give costlier lands, then probably we can earn more. The truth is, we'll cut down on the number of tourism. The global experience has shown that it's volumes that lead to revenue. It's not low volumes and higher taxation that leads to revenue. It's higher volumes and lower taxation that leads to a greater revenue. Now these are all sectors which we really have to look at as far as expansion of our own facilities is concerned. Even in more challenging areas, how much will the creation of new cities lead to the expansion of the services network in this country? Every new smart city will involve construction. It will involve IT facilities. It will involve education. It will involve retail. It will involve every kind of healthcare and other services. Financial sector complexes. I recently had an opportunity 2 weeks ago to inaugurate the GIFT City at Gandhinagar in Gujarat. Now Gujarat did it first, but there is no reason why such a financial sector hub and international SEZ should not be available in Mumbai at the Bandra Kurla complex. That's a natural home for such an activity. And the number of jobs it can generate, the amount of revenue it can generate, probably is going to be extremely large. And therefore, I think the net point that we have to understand that when next year in February you have this global exhibition, and I'm glad you made it an annual feature. This is our area of core strength. We have the ability to provide services cheaper. Identify those areas where services are not cheaper in India. And we go to each one, to us as the central government, to the state governments, that these are the areas to address where from education to healthcare to IT to professions, these are going to be generator of huge number of jobs in India, and therefore this is what we owe it to the present India and to the future India. And I am sure there would be similar arguments available for manufacturing and agriculture, where existing status quo really needs to be cracked and a new situation exists. But I have not the least doubt that the emphasis that you are making on the services sector with each year's exhibition, it's the curiosity and the creativity of the human mind which will generate new sectors and probably make India a much better place to live in. Your exhibition has been a grand success, and I'm sure it will be on a mega scale in the years to come. Thank you very much.